You want to know about fear? Real fear? Let me tell you about walking into a warlord's palace with listening devices taped to my goddamn ribs, knowing that if they found me, they wouldn't just kill me, they'd take their time with it. This was Chad, 1986, and the warlord in question was a man named Qasem al-Tounsi, regional strongman, militia commander, butcher, the kind of man who kept severed hands in jars to remind his enemies what happened when you crossed him. The agency wanted ears inside his compound. They wanted to know who he was meeting with, what deals he was making, whether the Libyans were funneling him weapons through the desert corridor. They wanted intelligence that satellites couldn't give them and paid informants wouldn't live long enough to deliver. They wanted someone to walk right into the bastard's home and plant devices where they'd never be found. They asked for volunteers. I raised my hand. That's it. That's how you get the good missions. That's how you end up doing things that matter instead of sitting in some godforsaken safe house in N'Djamena filing reports nobody reads. Volunteer for everything they come up with. Don't turn anything down. What sounds insignificant might be cover for something important. What sounds impossible might be the exact mission that defines your career. So when they brief this operation, penetrate a heavily guarded compound during a wedding celebration, plant 3 separate listening devices in specific rooms, extract, without compromise, everyone else in that room found reasons to pass too dangerous, too many variables, too likely to end with a bullet in the head or worse. I saw an opportunity. My cover was simple, and it fit the operational environment perfectly. Documentary filmmaker specializing in traditional African ceremonies. I'd been building this identity for 6 months, had business cards, had a portfolio of actual cultural documentation work I'd done in Senegal and Niger, had references that would check out if anyone bothered to verify them. I carried a 16mm Bolex camera that actually worked, actual film stock, actual photography credentials from a legitimate French cultural foundation that had no goddamn idea they were providing cover for CIA operations. The beauty of this cover was access. Qasem's wedding, his 3rd marriage, this time to the daughter of a rival clan leader as a political alliance, was being positioned as a major cultural event. Traditional ceremonies, tribal customs, regional significance, a documentary filmmaker requesting access to film the proceedings. That made sense. That provided value to Qasem's ego and his political positioning. He wanted to be seen as a legitimate leader, not just a warlord with blood on his hands. The invitation came through intermediaries. A series of carefully orchestrated contacts, each one bringing me closer to Qasem's inner circle. First, a local fixer in N'Djamena, then a clan elder who'd been paid to vouch for my credentials, then Qasem's own protocol officer, a nervous little shitbird named Ibrahim who chain-smoked French cigarettes and asked too many questions. You will film only what we permit, Ibrahim told me during our final meeting before the wedding. We were sitting in a cafe in N'Djamena, ceiling fans barely moving the 100-degree air. You will not film the guards. You will not film the weapons. You will film the ceremony, the celebration, the cultural traditions. You understand this? Completely, I said, speaking French with a deliberately thick American accent. I'm here for the culture, not the politics. Traditional ceremonies, family celebrations, this is what interests my foundation. He studied me through cigarette smoke. Suspicious. Everyone was suspicious in Chad in '86. The Civil War had been grinding on for years. The Libyans were involved. The French were involved. Everyone was running operations, and everyone knew it. The camera equipment, Ibrahim said, it will be inspected when you arrive. Of course, I said. Professional courtesy. I'd expect nothing less. What Ibrahim didn't know was that the camera equipment he'd inspect would be completely legitimate. Actual film equipment that actually worked. The listening devices I'd be carrying wouldn't be in the camera cases at all. They'd be on my body, in my clothing, in places they wouldn't find unless they strip-searched me completely, and even then, they'd need to know exactly what they were looking for. The devices themselves were beautiful pieces of technical work, not the bulky transmitters you see in movies. These were passive resonance cavities, no power source, no batteries to die, no electronic signature to detect. They worked on a principle the Soviets had used back in the 50s. An external microwave beam could activate them and pick up audio vibrations from the cavity resonance, plant them in the right locations, aim the collection antenna from a distance, and you had ears that would work for years. 3 devices, each one about the size of a coin, thin as a wafer, designed to be hidden in wall decorations, furniture, seams, anywhere structural that wouldn't move or be disturbed. My job was to plant them in 3 specific locations: Qasem's private office, his meeting room where he conducted business with visitors, and his personal quarters where he held late-night strategy sessions with his top lieutenants. The wedding would give me access to all 3 spaces. The agency had floor plans of the compound from satellite imagery and one previous source who'd been inside before getting his throat cut. They'd briefed me on the layout, the guard positions, the probable security protocols. But plans are one thing, reality is another. You don't know what you're walking into until you're actually goddamn well inside it. I had 48 hours until the wedding. I spent that time doing what any good operator does before high-risk penetration. I prepared, memorized the floor plans until I could walk them in my sleep, practiced the device placements until I could do them one-handed, eyes closed, in under 30 seconds each, rehearsed my cover story until the lies came smoother than truth, checked and rechecked my extraction plan, 3 different routes out of the compound, 2 fallback positions in N'Djamena, 1 emergency exfiltration point in the desert if everything went to shit, and I thought about what happens if you get caught. You think about it. You have to. Not to psyche yourself out, but to prepare yourself mentally for the possibility. If Qasem's people found me with those devices, I was a dead man. But the manner of dying, that was the variable. Quick bullet or prolonged interrogation followed by public execution? You make your peace with it. You accept the risk as part of the job, and you push it aside and focus on not getting caught in the first place. Never quit. That's the principle. Whatever happens, you don't quit. You keep moving forward, keep executing the mission, keep finding solutions when problems arise. The guys who quit are the ones who fail. The guys who keep pushing through those are the ones who come home with the intelligence that matters. The night before the wedding, I packed my equipment. The camera gear went into proper cases, clean, professional, exactly what a documentary filmmaker would carry. The listening devices went into 3 separate hiding spots on my body. 1 taped inside my left boot under the insole, 1 sewn into the waistband of my trousers in a thin pocket I'd created, 1 secured under the watch band of my wristwatch in a tiny cavity that looked like normal watch mechanics. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from fear, fear doesn't help anybody, but from operational focus, running through scenarios, visualizing success, seeing myself walk into that compound, plant those devices, walk back out again with nobody the wiser. At 5:30 the next morning, I was up. Shower, shave, dress in the clothing I'd selected. Lightweight khaki trousers, cream-colored cotton shirt, leather vest with multiple pockets for film and equipment. The outfit of a working documentarian, practical and professional. Nothing tactical, nothing that would draw a second glance. By 7 o'clock, I was in the Land Rover heading north toward Qasem's compound, which sat 30 kilometers outside N'Djamena in the desert scrubland where he ruled like a feudal lord. Ibrahim was waiting at the gates, and that's where the real operation began. The gates to Qasem's compound were 12 feet high, welded steel, reinforced with iron bars, flanked by guard towers on both sides. As our vehicle approached, I counted 8 visible guards, 4 at the gate, 2 in each tower, all of them carrying AK-47s. All of them watching our approach with the lazy alertness of men who'd spent too long in the sun but not long enough to forget how to kill. Ibrahim rode in the passenger seat, chain-smoking as usual. The driver was one of Qasem's men, silent and sullen, eyes hidden behind cheap sunglasses. I sat in the back with my camera equipment, looking every bit the curious American filmmaker excited about documenting authentic traditional culture. "Your papers," the lead guard said when we stopped at the gate. I handed them over through the window. "Passport." press credentials, letter of introduction from the French Cultural Foundation. Everything clean, everything legitimate, everything designed to pass inspection because it was real. The best covers aren't built on lies, they're built on truth, with just enough deception woven in to serve the operational purpose. The guard studied my documents with the slow deliberation of someone who couldn't read well but didn't want to admit it. He called over another guard, younger, who actually read through the paperwork and nodded. The equipment, the first guard said, gesturing toward the camera cases in the back. This was the moment. The first real test. I stepped out of the Land Rover and opened the rear hatch, pulling out the cases with the casual confidence of someone who had nothing to hide, because I didn't, not in those cases. The camera equipment was exactly what it appeared to be. Professional documentary gear that cost a goddamn fortune and actually worked perfectly. The guard opened the first case. Bolex camera body, clean and well maintained. He picked it up, turned it over in his hands, looked through the viewfinder like he knew what he was doing. He didn't, but I let him play with it. 16mm film camera, I explained in French. Manual wind, no electronics. Very reliable in desert conditions. Heat doesn't affect the mechanics. He set it down, opened the second case. Lenses, film canisters, light meter, cleaning supplies. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious, just the tools of the trade. The film, he said, pointing at the canisters. Unexposed, I said. Fresh stock from Paris. Would you like me to waste a roll so you can verify it? He hesitated. Wasting film meant opening a canister, exposing it to light, ruining it. That seemed wasteful even to him. He shook his head and gestured for me to close the cases. They never searched me personally. Not then. That would come later in a different context. But at the gate, they were focused on the obvious, the equipment, the papers, the vehicle itself. They looked underneath for explosives or hidden compartments. They checked the wheel wells. They even made the driver open the hood so they could verify the engine compartment was clean, but they never put hands on me. Never asked me to empty my pockets or remove my boots. The devices stayed hidden, pressed against my skin, waiting for their moment. You will stay in the guest quarters? Ibrahim told me as we drove through the gates into the compound itself, you will film only during the public ceremony. You will not wander without escort. These are the rules. Understood, I said, looking out the window at the compound spreading before us. It was bigger than the satellite photos had suggested. A main palace structure, 3 stories, whitewashed walls, ornate wooden balconies in the Saharan style, surrounded by smaller buildings that house guards, staff, family members, administrative functions. High walls encircled everything, topped with broken glass and razor wire, guard towers at each corner, armed patrols visible on the grounds. This wasn't just a home. This was a fortress. The Land Rover stopped in front of the main palace. Ibrahim led me inside through a side entrance, avoiding the main reception hall where early wedding preparations were already underway. Servants carrying food, musicians setting up instruments, women in traditional dress hanging decorations. The guest quarters were on the second floor. A simple room, clean but sparse. Bed, chair, small table, window that looked out over the desert. Ibrahim showed me where the bathroom was communal, down the hall, and told me someone would come for me when it was time for the ceremony. Rest, he said. The celebration begins at 1:30 this afternoon. You will have 2 hours to film. Then you leave. 2 hours is perfect, I said. More than enough for what I need. He left. I heard his footsteps recede down the hallway, heard a door close somewhere below, heard the general ambient noise of a household preparing for a major event. I waited 5 minutes. Then I moved. The listening devices were still secure in their hiding spots, but I needed to verify I could access them quickly when the moment came. Checked the boot first, pulled the insole up just enough to confirm the wafer-thin device was still taped in place, then settled it back down. The waistband next ran my finger along the seam until I felt the small, rigid shape sewn into the fabric. Good. The watch device was the easiest, looked like normal watch mechanics unless you knew exactly what you were looking at. All three devices accounted for. All three ready for deployment. Now came the hard part, reconnaissance. I couldn't just wander the palace. Ibrahim had been clear about that. But I could move purposefully, like someone looking for the bathroom or trying to orient myself in an unfamiliar building. That bought me maybe 10 minutes of movement before someone would question what I was doing. I stepped into the hallway. Empty. Good. I moved left toward what the floor plans had indicated was the direction of Qasim's private office, first target location for device placement. The hallway was wide, high-ceilinged, decorated with traditional Saharan textiles and ornate wooden carvings. Doors on both sides, some open, most closed. I walked with purpose, but not haste, looking like I belonged there, looking like I was simply exploring my temporary accommodations. Third door on the left, that should be the office based on the satellite imagery and floor plans, but when I reached it, the door was closed and I could hear voices inside, male voices, speaking Arabic in low tones. Business discussion, not a conversation I wanted to interrupt. I kept walking, made mental notes. Guard positions, one at the end of the hallway by the stairs, another visible through a window overlooking the courtyard below. Traffic patterns, servants moving between rooms, guards rotating positions every 20 minutes or so. Security protocols, nobody challenged me yet because I looked like I belonged. But that would change if I pushed too far into restricted areas. I found the bathroom Ibrahim had mentioned. Went inside. Used the facilities. Washed my hands. Looked at myself in the mirror and saw exactly what I needed to see. A slightly nervous American documentarian in over his head in an unfamiliar culture. Good. That was the right look. That was what they'd expect. Back in my room, I sat and waited. Patience is part of the job. You don't rush. You wait for the right moment, the right opportunity, the right window of operational possibility. Rushing gets you killed. Patience keeps you alive long enough to complete the mission. At 1:30 exactly, there was a knock on my door. Ibrahim stood in the hallway with another man I hadn't seen before, older, dressed in traditional robes, carrying himself with the authority of someone important in Qasim's hierarchy. "This is Rashid," Ibrahim said. "He will escort you during the filming. He will show you what you may document and what you may not." "Of course," I said, picking up my camera bag with practiced ease. "I appreciate the guidance." Rashid didn't speak, just nodded and turned, expecting me to follow. I did. The wedding ceremony was taking place in the main courtyard, a large open space at the center of the palace complex. They had erected a massive tent structure decorated with colorful fabrics, traditional Saharan patterns in reds and golds and deep blues. Musicians played drums and stringed instruments I didn't recognize. The air smelled of incense and roasted meat and the particular dust that never quite settles in the Sahel. Maybe 200 people filled the courtyard. Clan leaders, tribal elders, Qasim's lieutenants and their families, regional strongmen from neighboring territories. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a political gathering, a display of power and alliance, a statement about Qasim's position in the complex hierarchy of Chadian tribal politics. And there, at the center of it all, was Qasim himself. You could pick him out instantly, even in a crowd of 200. Not because he was physically imposing, he was average height, maybe 5'9", lean build, going soft around the middle from too much good food and not enough physical work. But he carried himself with absolute authority. Everyone oriented toward him. Every conversation paused when he moved. Every eye tracked him across the courtyard like iron filings following a magnet. He wore traditional robes in pristine white, embroidered with gold thread. A ceremonial dagger at his belt, probably never been used for anything more violent than cutting meat, but it made the statement. His bride stood beside him, young girl, maybe 16 or 17, beautiful in the way young girls are before life hardens them. She looked terrified and thrilled in equal measure. I raised the camera and started filming. This was legitimate. This was my cover in action. I moved around the perimeter of the ceremony space, Rashid shadowing me like a disapproving ghost, capturing footage that would actually be usable if anyone ever bothered to develop it. The musicians, the dancing, the elders blessing the union, the exchange of ceremonial gifts, and while I filmed, I watched, I observed, I identified opportunities. Qasim's office was on the third floor. I could see the windows from the courtyard, see the ornate wooden balcony that jutted out overlooking the celebration. The meeting room was on the second floor, eastern wing. His personal quarters were second floor, western wing, accessible through a private staircase I'd glimpsed during my earlier reconnaissance. 3 locations, 3 devices, limited windows of opportunity. The ceremony itself lasted maybe 45 minutes. Then came the feast, long tables set up under the tent, servants bringing out tray after tray of food, roasted lamb, couscous, dates and honeyed pastries, traditional Saharan dishes I didn't recognize but filmed anyway because that's what a documentarian would do. Qasim held court at the head table, bride beside him, lieutenants and important guests arrayed in descending order of importance. Everyone ate. Everyone drank sweet tea from tiny glasses. Everyone performed the elaborate social dance of tribal politics, where every gesture meant something and every slight carried consequences. I filmed it all, and I waited for my moment. It came around 3 o'clock when the formal meal ended and people started moving around, mingling, stepping away to smoke or relieve themselves or conduct the sidebar conversations that are the real business of such gatherings. I need to film from an elevated position. I told Rashid, speaking French loud enough to be heard over the general noise, to capture the scope of the celebration. The second floor balcony would be perfect. Rashid frowned. That is not permitted. Just the external balcony, I said quickly. I won't enter any private rooms. Just the balcony overlooking the courtyard. 5 minutes. The lighting is perfect right now. See how the sun hits the tent structure? In 30 minutes, that angle will be gone. He hesitated. This was the push. The moment where covers succeed or fail based on how well you've built them and how confidently you sell them. 5 minutes. I said again, Rashid, you'll stand right beside me. You'll see everything I film. If the footage doesn't serve Qasim's image well, I won't use it. But I promise you this angle will make the celebration look magnificent. The appeal to Qasim's vanity did it. Rashid nodded reluctantly. 5 minutes only. And I watch everything. Of course, I said. We moved through the crowd toward the palace entrance. A guard stood at the door, but Rashid waved him aside with casual authority. We climbed the interior stairs to the second floor. My heart rate stayed steady. This was it. This was the operational moment, but I kept my breathing even and my exterior calm. The balcony was accessed through a common hallway separate from the private room entrances. Perfect. Rashid led me to the correct door, and we stepped out onto the ornate wooden structure that overlooked the courtyard celebration below. The view was spectacular. I wasn't lying about that. The whole ceremony spread out below us. The tent, the guests, the musicians, the elaborate organized chaos of a major tribal wedding. I raised the camera and started filming, making sure Rashid could see exactly what I was capturing. Beautiful, I said. This is exactly what I needed. I filmed for maybe 3 minutes, legitimate footage, real documentation. Then I lowered the camera and turned to Rashid. The light meter, I said, patting my vest pockets with manufactured concern. God damn it, I left it in my room. I need it to verify the exposure settings for this lighting condition. Can I run back and get it? 30 seconds. I know exactly where it is. Rashid looked irritated but nodded. Be quick. 30 seconds, I said again. I moved back through the balcony door into the hallway. Rashid stayed on the balcony. He could see the doorway from there, could verify I wasn't going anywhere I shouldn't, but he couldn't see around the corner. I turned right instead of left, moved fast but not frantically. The office was 4 doors down according to the floor plans. I counted them. 1, 2, 3, fourth door. Tried the handle. Locked. Shit. No time for lockpicks. No time for finesse. I pulled the device from my boot, had to bend down fast, slip my fingers under the insole, peel away the tape holding the wafer-thin listening device in place. Got it. Stood up, looked at the door. Locked doors are a problem. But there was a gap, maybe a quarter inch, between the bottom of the door and the floor. Ornate wooden doors look beautiful, but they're not precision fitted like modern security doors. There was space. I knelt down, slid the device under the door, pushed it as far as I could reach with my index finger. It disappeared into the darkness of the room beyond. Not ideal placement. The agency had wanted it mounted high on a wall where voices would carry clearly, but it was inside the office and it would work. The resonance cavity would still pick up conversations as long as it wasn't buried under furniture or covered completely. Done. First device placed. 15 seconds elapsed. I stood up, turned around, walked back toward the balcony with my light meter in hand. I'd actually grabbed it from my vest pocket where it had been all along. Got it, I told Rashid, stepping back onto the balcony. Sorry about that. Let me get a few more shots with the proper exposure settings. He grunted. Didn't suspect anything. Why would he? I'd been gone 20 seconds maximum, came back with the equipment I said I needed, went right back to filming the ceremony below. 1 down, 2 to go. The second device needed to go in the meeting room, second floor, eastern wing, where Qasem conducted business with visitors and held strategy sessions with his military commanders. This was going to be harder. The meeting room was in a restricted area, not accessible from public spaces like the balcony had been. I needed a different approach, a different opportunity. It came during the traditional dancing that began around 4 o'clock. Someone had brought out drummers, huge goatskin drums that created rhythms you felt in your chest as much as heard with your ears. Women danced in the center of the courtyard, elaborate movements that told stories I didn't understand but filmed anyway because they were visually stunning. Qasem watched from his seat of honor. His lieutenants watched. Everyone watched. The attention of the entire celebration focused on the dancers, which meant attention wasn't focused on me. I edged away from the main gathering, camera still in hand, moving like I was looking for better angles. Rashid followed, but with less diligence. Now he was watching the dancers too, distracted by the spectacle and the drum beats and probably the sweet tea that flowed freely and made men less vigilant than they should be. I circled around the perimeter of the courtyard toward the eastern wing entrance. A guard stood there, but he was also watching the dancers, his AK-47 slung casually over his shoulder, more interested in the entertainment than his security duties. This is what complacency looks like. This is how penetrations succeed. Not through elaborate deceptions, but through human nature. People get distracted. People get lazy. People assume security measures are sufficient without constantly verifying them. I walked right past the guard. Didn't sneak. Didn't creep. Just walked with purpose, like I belonged there. Camera in hand. Looking every bit the documentarian, searching for the perfect shot. He didn't even glance at me. Inside the eastern wing, the hallway was cooler, dimmer, empty. I could still hear the drums from the courtyard, but they were muffled now, distant. My footsteps echoed on the tile floor. The meeting room was halfway down the hall on the left. I knew this from the floor plans, but I didn't know if it would be locked, if it would be occupied, if guards would be stationed inside. Only one way to find out. I approached the door, put my hand on the ornate brass handle, took a breath, turned it, unlocked, empty, goddamn beautiful. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The meeting room was larger than I'd expected. Long table in dark wood, maybe 12 chairs around it. Maps on the walls, regional maps, tribal territory markers, strategic positions marked with pins and notation I couldn't read from the doorway. Bookshelves along one wall, windows overlooking a different section of the compound, and perfect placement opportunities everywhere. The device from my waistband came out easily. I'd practiced this enough times that my fingers found the hidden seam without looking, extracted the wafer-thin listening device, had it palmed and ready in under 3 seconds. Where to plant it? The maps drew my attention. If this was where Qasim held strategy sessions, people would gather around those maps, would discuss operations and troop movements and tactical decisions while pointing at geographic features. Audio quality would be excellent there. I moved to the wall where the largest map hung some kind of regional survey showing territory from southern Libya down through Chad to the Central African Republic border. The map was mounted in a simple wooden frame, nothing fancy, held to the wall by two brass hooks. I lifted the bottom edge of the frame slightly, slid the device between the map backing and the wall, pressed it flat. The frame settled back down naturally. Unless someone removed the entire map from the wall and examined the backing carefully, they'd never find it. 2 down, 1 to go. I turned to leave and heard footsteps in the hallway. Shit. The footsteps were approaching, multiple people talking in Arabic, getting closer. No time to exit through the door, they'd see me. No time to hide effectively, the room had furniture but no real concealment. No time for anything except the camera. I raised it to my eye and started filming the maps on the wall, moving the camera slowly across the display like I was documenting the room's decoration for cultural context. The door opened. 3 men entered. Qasim's lieutenants, from the look of them military bearing, comfortable with authority. Surprised to find someone in this room, but not immediately hostile. "What are you doing here?" the lead man asked in French. I lowered the camera and smiled apologetically. "My apologies. I'm documenting the palace architecture and traditional decoration. These maps, the cartography style is fascinating, very traditional. I thought it would provide good cultural context for the film." "This is a private area," he said. "I understand," I said quickly. "I apologize for the intrusion. Rashid authorized me to film architectural details, but perhaps I misunderstood the boundaries. I'll leave immediately." The mention of Rashid's name helped. If I had an escort, I wasn't a complete unknown. The lieutenant frowned, but stepped aside to let me pass. "Film the ceremony," he said, "not the private rooms." "Of course," I said. Again, my apologies. I walked past him, camera bag over my shoulder, heart rate elevated, but not panicking. This is what good cover does. It gives you plausible deniability, even when you're caught somewhere you shouldn't be. A documentarian getting overeager about cultural details? That's believable. That's forgivable. That's not worth shooting someone over. I made it back to the courtyard without further incident. Found Rashid watching the dancing. He noticed me returning and frowned. "Where did you go?" "Interior shots," I said. "Architectural details. One of Qasim's men reminded me to stay in public areas. I apologize for the confusion." He grunted. Didn't push it further. The dancing continued. The celebration continued. Everything continued as if nothing had happened. But I had 2 devices placed. 2 out of 3. The difficult part was still ahead. The personal quarters. The 3rd device needed to go in Qasim's personal quarters, 2nd floor, western wing, where he held late-night strategy sessions with his inner circle, where the most sensitive conversations happened, where the intelligence value would be highest. This was also the most heavily guarded location, the most restricted, the most dangerous. I couldn't just wander into the Warlord's bedroom and plant a listening device while a wedding celebration happened downstairs. That kind of penetration required a different approach, required the right moment, required luck and timing and the kind of operational boldness that separates successful missions from catastrophic failures. The opportunity came around 6:30 as the sun started setting and the celebration shifted from daytime feast to evening party. Qasim left the courtyard. I watched him stand, say something to his lieutenants, gesture toward the palace. His new bride followed him. They were retiring briefly before the evening festivities. Traditional, expected. Part of the wedding customs, which meant his personal quarters would be occupied for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. Then he'd return. Then I'd have no chance at all. I found Rashid. "I need to film the sunset from the western balcony." I said, "The light right now is perfect for dramatic shots. The contrast between the celebration below and the desert landscape. 5 minutes. He was tired. 6 hours of following me around. 6 hours of watching me film, boring cultural documentation. 6 hours of sweet tea and heat and the general exhaustion that comes from extended vigilance. He waved me off. Be quick, don't enter private areas, just the balcony. Just the balcony, I confirmed. I moved fast. Western wing, second floor. The personal quarters were at the end of a private corridor, guarded by 2 men with AK-47s who stood alert and serious and not at all distracted by celebrations or sweet tea. No way past them through the corridor. But the floor plans had shown a servant's access stairway narrow for household staff to move between floors without using the main stairs. It connected the kitchen areas on the ground floor directly to the private wing on the second floor. I found the service stairs. No guard. Why guard a stairway? Servants use constantly. I climbed quickly. Second floor servants' entrance put me into a small preparation area, linens, cleaning supplies, the functional back-of-house space that exists in every large residence. A hallway led from the preparation area toward the private quarters. I could hear voices, Qasim and his bride, in the bedroom beyond. Low conversation in Arabic, the sound of movement. I couldn't enter the bedroom. Not with them inside. The floor plans had shown a connected dressing chamber, a separate space where Qasim kept his formal robes and military uniforms and personal effects. If I could get into that space, a servant came around the corner carrying fresh linens. She stopped when she saw me. Young woman, maybe 20 years old, eyes going wide with surprise and concern. I smiled and spoke French quietly. I'm sorry, I'm lost. I was filming the sunset from the balcony and took the wrong stairway. Can you show me back to the main corridor? She hesitated, looked at the camera bag, looked at my confused tourist expression, made a decision. This way, she said in accented French. You should not be here. I know, I said. I apologize. These old buildings very confusing. She led me away from the private quarters, exactly the opposite direction I needed to go. But she was helping me. That meant she didn't see me as a threat. That meant I could use this. Halfway down the servants' hallway, I stopped. Wait, I need to use the bathroom. Is there one nearby? For guests? She pointed back the way we'd come. The guest facilities are in the main corridor. I'll show you. I really need to go, I said with manufactured urgency. Is there a servants' facility closer? I apologize for the intrusion, but... She sighed and pointed to a door. There, be quick. Thank you, I said. I went into the bathroom, counted to 30, came back out. She was gone, probably returned to her duties, assuming the confused American had found his way or would figure it out eventually. Perfect. I moved back toward the private quarters. The voices from the bedroom had stopped. Either they'd gone deeper into the quarters or stepped out onto the private balcony. Either way, I had maybe 2 minutes before someone came through that corridor or before Qasim emerged to return to the celebration. The dressing chamber door was unmarked, but I knew where it should be based on the floor plans. Third door on the right. I tried the handle, unlocked. I slipped inside and closed the door silently behind me. The dressing chamber was exactly what I had expected. Racks of traditional robes, military uniforms hanging in precise order, shelves of folded garments, a full-length mirror, ornate wooden furniture, the smell of sandalwood and tobacco, personal effects everywhere. The last device came from my watch band and required the most delicate extraction because it was small enough that dropping it would mean losing it forever in this room full of fabric and furniture. I worked the watch clasp carefully, exposed the hidden cavity, used the tip of my fingernail to lever out the wafer-thin listening device, got it, palmed it. Now where to plant it? The furniture offered the best option, an ornate wooden cabinet against the wall where Qasim probably kept jewelry or important papers or personal items he valued. The cabinet had decorative carved panels on the sides. I knelt down, examined the joint where the side panel met the cabinet frame, found a tiny gap in the woodwork. Perfect. I slid the device into the gap, used my fingernail to push it deeper into the joint until it was completely hidden. Unless someone disassembled the cabinet entirely, they'd never find it. And The placement was good. Any conversations in his dressing chamber or the connected bedroom would be picked up clearly by the resonance cavity. 3 devices, all placed, mission accomplished. Now came the hardest part, getting the hell out without getting caught. I stood up, turned toward the door, heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Close, very close. Coming this way. No time to exit. I looked around frantically for concealment. The robes, dozens of traditional robes hanging on racks. I stepped behind them, pressed myself against the wall, let the fabric create a curtain between me and the rest of the room. The door opened. Let me complete this scene with the close call, then move through extraction from the compound, keeping the focus on action and tactical detail as the user emphasized. Need to maintain tension and keep viewers engaged. Qasim himself walked in. I could see him through the gap between robes, close enough to touch, close enough to smell the sandalwood oil he wore. He moved to the cabinet, the same goddamn cabinet where I'd just planted the device and opened a drawer. I didn't breathe, didn't move, didn't even blink. He rummaged in the drawer for something, took his time about it, finally pulled out a small wooden box, examined its contents, seemed satisfied. He closed the drawer and turned to leave. Then he paused. Something had caught his attention, a detail out of place. Maybe the robes shifted wrong. Maybe he heard my breathing. Maybe he just had that warrior's instinct that tells you when something isn't quite right. He turned back toward the racks where I was hiding, stepped closer. This was it. This was how operations end. Discovered hiding in a warlord's private dressing chamber with listening devices planted throughout his compound. No talking my way out of this one. No cover story that would save me. Just violence and consequences and a very bad death. Qasim reached toward the robes. A voice called from the corridor. Qasim, they're waiting for you. The elders want to present the ceremonial gifts. He paused, hand inches from the fabric concealing me. Coming, he called back. He turned away from the robes, walked to the door, stepped through it, and was gone. I waited 30 seconds, heart hammering, breathing shallow. Then I moved, out from behind the robes, to the door, listened. Corridor quiet. Opened the door, checked both ways. Empty. I slipped out and moved fast down the servants' corridor to the access stairs, down to the ground floor, out through the kitchen area where servants barely glanced at the American with the camera bag, into the courtyard where the celebration continued and nobody had noticed my absence. Found Rashid. Beautiful sunset shots, I told him. Exactly what I needed. He grunted. Didn't care. The celebration was reaching its peak, more dancing, more music, the ceremonial gift presentations that would last for hours. I have enough footage, I told him. More than enough. Thank you for your patience today. I'll compile the documentary over the next few weeks and send a copy to Qasim as a gift. You're leaving now, he asked. I think that's appropriate, I said. The evening celebrations are for family and close friends. I've documented the formal ceremony. That was my purpose here. He seemed relieved. One less responsibility to worry about. 20 minutes later, I was in a Land Rover heading back toward N'Djamena. Camera equipment secured, cover story intact, 3 listening devices planted exactly where the agency needed them. I didn't relax until we were 10 kilometers from the compound. Then I let myself feel it, the adrenaline, the relief, the satisfaction of a mission executed successfully despite multiple close calls and complications. Never quit. That's what carried me through. When the office door was locked, I found another way. When lieutenants discovered me in the meeting room, I used my cover. When Qasim himself almost caught me in his dressing chamber, I stayed calm and let the moment pass. Warriors don't quit. They adapt. They persist. They find solutions when problems arise, and they keep moving forward until the mission is complete. You want to know what I learned from that operation? What principles emerged from walking into a warlord's palace and walking back out with intelligence capabilities in place? First, volunteering for everything isn't just career advice. It's operational philosophy. Nobody else raised their hand for that mission. Too dangerous. Too many variables. too likely to fail. But I volunteered because that's what warriors do. They seek involvement, they seek action, they seek opportunities to contribute something that matters. And look what happened. 3 listening devices planted in the exact locations the agency needed. Intelligence gathering capability that would operate for years, providing information about Qasim's operations, his connections to Libya, his military planning, his political alliances. That intelligence helped shape U.S. policy in the region, helped predict conflicts before they erupted, helped save lives by providing early warning of attacks being planned. None of that happens if I don't volunteer. Second, the warrior mindset isn't about violence. It's about being willing to be involved, period. Yeah, I was prepared to kill if discovered. Had contingency plans for violent extraction if everything went to shit. But the mission wasn't about killing, it was about intelligence gathering, about placing technical surveillance equipment, about walking into a dangerous situation and walking back out again with the objective accomplished. That's what warriors do. They engage with difficult problems. They take on missions other people won't touch. They find ways to contribute even when the odds are stacked against them. Third, never quit means exactly that. When complications arise, and they always arise, you don't pack up and go home. You adapt. You find alternative approaches. You keep pushing toward mission completion no matter what obstacles present themselves. That locked office door could have ended the operation right there. Instead, I found a gap under the door and made it work. The lieutenants discovering me in the meeting room could have blown my cover. Instead, I used the cover to explain my presence and moved on. Qasim himself almost caught me in his dressing chamber. Instead, I stayed calm and waited for the moment to pass. Never quit doesn't mean being stupid. It means being persistent. It means finding solutions instead of excuses. It means understanding that every obstacle has a workaround if you're creative enough and determined enough to find it. Those 3 principles, volunteer for everything, embrace the warrior mindset of involvement, never quit, they carried me through that operation. They carried me through 40 years of operations in denied areas and hostile territories. They carried me through missions in Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos and Sudan and Chad and a dozen other places where things went wrong and complications arose and success depended on persistence more than planning. You don't need to be the strongest guy in the room. You don't need to be the smartest or the fastest or the best shot. What you need is the willingness to volunteer, the commitment to stay involved, and the determination to never goddamn quit no matter what happens. That's what makes a warrior. That's what made that operation successful. That's what I'm telling you now, because maybe it'll matter to someone watching this who's facing their own obstacles, their own locked doors, their own moments of almost getting caught. Don't quit. Find a way. Keep moving forward. Here's what you need to understand about operations like this. They're not special because of the danger. Danger's easy. Bullets and blood and violence, that shit's simple. What makes them special is the execution under pressure, the ability to adapt when plans change, the persistence to keep finding solutions when obstacles arise, the discipline to maintain cover even when fear wants you to run. I walked into Qasim's compound with 3 listening devices and a camera bag. I walked out with those devices planted exactly where they needed to be, and nobody the wiser. That's not luck. That's preparation meeting opportunity. That's training meeting determination. That's the warrior mindset in action. Every single person watching this video faces their own locked doors, their own complications, their own moments where quitting looks easier than pushing forward. Maybe it's not a warlord's palace. Maybe it's a difficult business deal or a challenging relationship or a personal goal that seems impossible to achieve. The principles don't change. Volunteer for the difficult tasks. Don't wait for perfect opportunities. Create them by raising your hand when others are backing away. That's how you end up doing things that matter instead of watching from the sidelines while other people take the risks and earn the rewards. Never quit when complications arise, and they will arise. They always do. The question isn't whether you'll face obstacles, it's whether you'll find ways around them or use them as excuses to give up. Embrace involvement. Be willing to be in the arena, taking risks, facing consequences, contributing something instead of nothing. Warriors aren't defined by killing or violence. They're defined by the desire to be involved in action that matters. That's it. That's the bottom line. 3 listening devices in a warlord's palace. 3 times I could have quit, could have backed away, could have decided the risk was too high. 3 times I found a way forward instead. 40 years of operations taught me one simple truth. The guys who quit are the guys who fail. The guys who keep pushing those are the ones who accomplish missions, who contribute something meaningful, who look back on their lives without regret because they were willing to be involved when involvement mattered. Be that guy. Volunteer for everything. Never quit. Stay in the arena. Everything else is just details.